Ryan here with Dark Rangers Inc. And have you been thinking about using a modern mirrorless camera for astrophotography? Well, if you have, you're in luck, because that's what we're going to go over today. And I'm going to test my very own Nikon Z7 II that I used to film every episode of this channel and see just how good is it for astrophotography. Now, if you're like me, you probably started off with a DSLR like this Nikon D750, and maybe you're new to the hobby or looking to upgrade, and you're not sure if you want to go all in on an astrophotography dedicated camera because you still want to retain the flexibility of being able to shoot video, landscapes, or maybe even portraits. Just want to be able to throw it in a bag and take it with you, but still take amazing images of the night sky. Now, I should be able to tell you this right off the bat because I've owned this camera for a little while now, but unfortunately, after taking just one image of Roa Fuki, I went all into the hobby, went out and got a 2600 MC, and haven't looked back on astrophotography cameras since. But that's all going to change because tonight we're going to do a full night on the North American Nebula, and the moon is still pretty full, so we're not going to be pulling any punches on this test. And tomorrow I'm going to take a look at the data and see just how good is it, because modern mirrorless cameras have come a long way in their ability to suppress noise but still retain all the amazing features that you like with the DSLR. So is this a case of really being able to have your cake and eat it too? Well, stay tuned because we're going to find out. All right, so while the imaging is going on, I did want to go over some of the stats and kind of compare and contrast the mirrorless versus the AstroCam. And since I know not everyone's a Nikon user, I'm going to break it up into two tiers of mirrorless cameras. The Nikon Z6 II, which will really closely align with the Canon EOS R6 and the Sony A7C. And then what I have, the Nikon Z7 II, which will be really similar to the Canon EOS R5 and the Sony A7 R4. So first, let's jump into the price. The Nikon Z6 II is actually on sale, and actually all of these cameras are on sale as of the end of August for kind of a Labor Day special. So if you are looking to make a decision, this video couldn't come kind of at a better time. The Z6 II is normally $19.99. There's a $300 sale, so it's currently $16.99, making it less than the normal price of the 2600. The Z7 II is normally $26.99. It's on sale for $25.99, so just a $100 discount on that. The regular 2600, I just saw this actually today, is actually having a huge sale because of the Duo. It's now $14.39. So I'm really curious to see, now that there's over a $500 price point gap between the Duo and the regular 2600, which one will sell, and the Duo is still at the full price of $19.99. So now let's dive into some of the sensor stats. So the nice thing about mirrorless is you're able to get into a full frame sensor for a much lower price point. All 6 mirrorless cameras I mentioned are full frame, and like I said, the Z6 II on sale is lower than the normal price for the 2600. Now, what that means is basically you're going to get a wider field of view, and it's pretty significant. So the stats is 23.5 by 15.7 millimeters for the APS-C, which is the AstroCam, and 35.9 by 25.9 for the full frame, meaning the short side of the rectangle on the full frame is actually wider than the long angle of the rectangle on the APS-C. So it is pretty significant. Now, in terms of megapixels, the Z6 II is 24.5 with 5.45 micron pixels, so they are a little bit larger. The Z7 II is 45.7 megapixels, I mean quite a bit more than both of those, with 4.35 micron pixels, which is actually pretty similar to the 2600, which is 26 megapixels as the name would imply, with 3.7 micron pixels. In terms of bit depth, the Z6 II has 25-bit color depth and a 14.43 dynamic range. The Z7 II has a 26.3 color depth and a 14.7 dynamic range, and the 2600 is 14.0 dynamic range. So both mirrorless cameras actually do have a slightly better dynamic range than the 2600. Frames per second, the Z6 II is 12, the Z7 II is 10 because they are much larger files. The 2600 MC is 3.5, so significantly less, but then the Duo did bump it up to 15, which would make it the class leader. So what are some of the other features that are really important and could make the mirrorless a better choice for for you? Well, like I'm doing now, 4K video. It also has 8K time lapse. So rather than taking individual photos and having to put it all together, I can actually do an 8K movie time lapse and it just set the amount of time I want it to go for, how long each exposure is, and then it spits out an 8K video with amazing resolution and quality. You also get the ability to run on a battery. You don't need software or an operating system. It has a 3.8 OLED display, so I can see everything that I'm doing in real time, which is really nice. And then obviously the flexibility of being able to run with either a lens or a telescope really quickly without any adapters for the lens, being able to kind of run and gun, just slap it on a tripod and use it for any other type of photography. So flexibility is massively improved with the mirrorless. With the AstroCam, obviously you're going to have two-stage cooling, which is going to lead to a lower read noise and dark current, which is super, super important for astrophotography. And then the anti-dew feature is really nice, especially now for the humid summer months where we're getting dew on pretty much everything. Typically, you're going to get a better quantum efficiency. And then obviously the ability later on to go monochrome, which is a whole different discussion. All right, we're back. We've done all the hard work. We've gone over the boring stuff. Now let's dive into the important part of the data. What are our subjective findings that we have when looking at the stacked image? Now, first of all, I want to say I did not do flats with this. I had taken the camera off and put it back on. And when I put the flats on, there ended up being some extra dust spots that weren't there when I did the image. So that's on me. So it ended up doing more harm than good. The other realization I had is I did actually have one more deep space photo other than RAW. But I was right when I said I never hooked it up to a telescope, and that's because I forgot I did rent a 150 to 600 millimeter Tamron G2 lens, and I took this image of the Orion Nebula under some really nice Bortle 2 skies with about 4 hours of data. So you not only get the Milky Way shot for the thumbnail, you get under a zoom lens, and now we're going to go over what we got with a actual telescope. So first impressions, as you can see, it's a lot further from my final image than my typical data is. My master lights from my 2600 cameras are much closer to the final image than this is, but here's the really good news. The data is there. You just need to strip away a lot more fat before you get to what you want. And I know that this is the case because I look at nebula photos and Astro Backyard who use DSLR or mirrorless more often, and you can see it with their images. The final stacked image that comes from an astrophotography cam is just going to look better. But the nice thing is once you get rid of all of the stuff, it is actually pretty good data, and it was pretty low in terms of noise. So if we zoom in, I did obviously NoiseXterminator. This is just what I got with PixInsight. This is not the final image. You do see one spot that needed to be removed from the flats that I just took care of in Photoshop. But the data is actually pretty clean. I mean, we're talking about 4.5 hours on nearly a full moon. And so I'm actually pretty happy with it. It just took a little bit more finessing in the editing process to get to it. Here is the final image. And I think if we were to sum it all up, we would say this. If you really need to maintain the flexibility of video, normal photography, maybe you're a little bit more into Milky Way photography at this point than you are deep space, I really think this actually is a great option. I think it's about 95% as good as an astrophotography in terms of giving you clean, usable data, that really good signal to noise ratio. I didn't see a lot of extra noise from this, even though it wasn't cooled. It was about 70 degrees at night when I shot, so it wasn't exactly a cold night. It wasn't scorching hot either, but these really weren't ideal conditions. You know, 92% moon, Bortle 5 during the summer, and I'm pretty happy with only one night. As you guys know, I tend to like to combine a lot of data. I never stack images with 4 hours like this one or 6 hours like my one-shot color versus mono video. And so I have to say, like, I am enjoying doing these one-night images because, yeah, they take a little bit more work than I'm used to, but you're actually left with something that you can be fairly proud of. So if you are trying to figure out what the next best option is, but you're really wanting to keep that flexibility, guys, I think absolutely mirrorless is a viable option for astrophotography. If you are that discerning person who needs every last bit of performance, I do think an astrophotography camera is going to slightly edge out a mirrorless camera in terms of deep space and Milky Way performance. But you are not going to be unhappy with the images you get with a modern mirrorless camera. So guys, please leave your questions, comments, like the videos, subscribe. We are on our way to 1,000 subs. I love the support you guys are giving me, all the comments, and I'm going to keep these videos coming out for you guys. I appreciate the support. And one thing I was actually thinking of on the topic of lenses, if you guys want, let me know a lens that you'd like to see tested that has to go with a Nikon Z or F mount, and maybe I could look at renting, depending on the cost, to actually go out and test under some dark skies and see how well it performs versus a telescope. So guys, thank you so much. Stay tuned and clear skies.